When we think of the 30 Years' War, we often picture grand battles and shifting alliances. But behind the clash of armies lay a much darker, more devastating story. One of villages burned, families shattered, and an entire continent brought to its knees. This wasn't just a war. It was a catastrophe that reshaped the very fabric of European society. Let's start with the sheer human cost. The numbers are staggering and almost hard to comprehend. Across the German lands, which were the main theater of the war, the population loss was catastrophic. In some regions, between 20 to 40% of all inhabitants perished. Think about that for a moment. In places like Württemberg, the population plummeted by more than half. Entire communities, entire generations were simply wiped off the map. This wasn't just battlefield deaths. This was a demographic collapse on a scale Europe hadn't seen in centuries. What caused this immense loss of life? War, of course, but also its two cruel companions, famine and disease. Armies, both friendly and hostile, were like locusts consuming everything in their path. They marched across the land, destroying crops, seizing grain, and slaughtering livestock. As a result, fields that once fed families lay fallow and barren. Famine became a grim, constant reality for millions. People were forced to eat whatever they could find: grass, leaves, even things we wouldn't consider food today. And where famine went, disease followed. Malnourished and weakened bodies were easy prey for sickness. The massive movements of soldiers, camp followers, and refugees created perfect conditions for epidemics. The plague, typhus, and dysentery swept through towns and countryside alike, killing indiscriminately. A soldier might survive a battle only to succumb to a fever in his camp, and he could carry that disease to the next village his army passed through, compounding the death toll far beyond the battlefield. The economic devastation was just as complete. The war was a wrecking ball to the economy of Central Europe. The agricultural heartland was ruined. With fields destroyed and farmers dead or displaced, the very foundation of the economy crumbled. Trade routes were severed. Merchants couldn't move goods safely, and currencies fluctuated wildly, leading to hyperinflation and financial ruin. Cities, the centers of commerce and culture, were not spared. The infamous sack of Magdeburg in 1631 is a chilling example. The prosperous city was besieged, stormed, and then systematically plundered and burned. Of its 25,000 inhabitants, only about 5,000 survived. Magdeburg was an extreme case, but countless other towns and cities suffered similar fates, their wealth stolen and their populations decimated. It would take generations, in some cases centuries, for these urban centers to recover. With this level of destruction came the complete disintegration of social order. Local governance collapsed. Law and order vanished, replaced by the rule of the strongest. Banditry became rampant, as desperate people and demobilized soldiers turned to crime simply to survive. It was a world turned upside down, where safety was a memory and violence was a daily reality. This chaos created a refugee crisis of unimaginable proportions. Millions were forced from their homes, becoming wanderers in their own land. They fled burning villages and rampaging armies, seeking safety, food, and shelter wherever they could find it. These were not soldiers, but ordinary families, farmers, artisans, merchants, stripped of everything, their lives reduced to a desperate search for the next meal and a safe place to rest. In summary, the 30 Years' War was far more than a political or religious conflict. It was a social and economic apocalypse for much of Central Europe. It left behind a legacy of trauma, a scarred landscape, and a demographic void that would take over a century to fill. It stands as a terrifying reminder of how war can unravel the very threads that hold a civilization together. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this glimpse into the past insightful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical events you'd like to explore. See you in the next video.